Hi guys, today I want to discuss the radiocarbon dating results of the Great Pyramids of Giza and why they might not represent the real ages of the pyramids. I think these dating studies might reveal some ancient Egyptian activity that has not been considered, which might have affected the radiocarbon dating results. So far, there are two carbon-14 studies done in 1984 and in 1995. Both dating results are more than 100 years older than the respective kings' ruling times. This might not seem like a big deal, since these results still put the pyramids in the dynastic Egyptian period. However, that 100-plus year deviation is actually significant, as it challenges the narrative whether ancient Egyptians really built the pyramids. Another striking finding from the radiocarbon dating research is that the 1995 dating results vary widely even for a single monument. For the Khufu Pyramid and the Menkaure Pyramid, the dating scattered over a range of over 1,000 years. For the Khafre Pyramid, the dates range over 700 years. Does that mean the pyramids took centuries to construct? That will contradict historians' claim that the Great Pyramid of Khufu merely took 20 to 30 years to complete. Egyptologists are having difficulties making sense of these carbon results, though they incline to make the vague statements saying that the carbon dating is generally agreeing with the current pyramid timeline. Some postulated that the older and scattered dating results are perhaps because the ancient Egyptians used old wood as firewood, which left older-aged charcoal fragments. I investigated the 1995 carbon-14 data and found other unusual points, which the old wood hypothesis cannot explain and will question the conventional dating of the Great Pyramids. These interesting carbon dating results illuminate a very different story from the one told by mainstream Egyptologists, and I have a new theory which works better on interpreting the carbon dating results. As we know, carbon-14 dating only works on organic materials, while the pyramids are made of large stone blocks. For instance, the Khufu Pyramid is estimated to have been built with 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing on average 2 tons. The tremendous volume of work of the pyramids is hard to comprehend. What astonishes us is not only the massive scale of the pyramids, but also their amazing precision. The surviving casing stones of the Great Pyramid showcase fine conjoining seams between blocks. They are super precise and accurate that a hair cannot fit in between the stones. Remarkable stonework this tight has no room for mortar. The mortar, which researchers use for carbon-14 dating, are from the exposed pyramid's core stones. Unlike the highly precise and laser-accurate casings, the pyramid core stones are sometimes not placed tightly, and in certain areas, the gaps can be a few inches wide, and a large amount of mortar filled the gaps. In the 80s, researchers noticed some gypsum mortar in the gaps between the stones. Within this mortar was embedded organic materials, like charcoal and reed. They proposed that ancient Egyptians used to burn wood to heat the gypsum in order to make gypsum mortar. During this process, occasionally, charcoal and other fragments might get solidified in the mortar. They then searched all over the Great Pyramids for charcoal-containing mortar and took samples for the radiocarbon dating study. The 1984 research program collected around 70 samples from the Old Kingdom pyramids. The dating results were notably older than Egyptologists believed, on average 374 years too old for the kings who supposedly built these monuments. This prompted the second, larger 1995 study, which over 300 samples were carefully collected on various monuments, and the paper was later published in 2001. This is the most extensive chronometric study on ancient Egyptian sites. The dating program had been the most rigorous for the 4th dynasty Old Kingdom pyramids, which include the 3 Great Pyramids of Giza. Here are the published carbon-14 dating results. Researchers are again surprised to see the discrepancies found with the Old Kingdom sites, like the Great Pyramids. The medium calibrated ages of the Giza pyramids are about 100 to 200 years older than expected. The interesting thing is, the carbon dating results are in fair agreement with the historical dates for the earlier First Dynasty tombs at North Saqqara and later Middle Kingdom sites. If the Middle Kingdom radiocarbon dates are good, why are the Old Kingdom dating of the pyramids so problematic? By the way, the radiocarbon years are not the same as calendar years and are generally younger. By using an online tool, I converted the carbon-14 years of the 3 Great Pyramids from the paper to calendar years for easier comparison with the mainstream pyramids dating. Giza pyramids, being just 100 to 200 years older than assumed, might not appear too controversial on the surface. But in fact, it's quite significant, because that will push the 2 big Great Pyramids, Khufu and Khafre, plus the step pyramids construction earlier, to be out of the Old Kingdom era to the Second Dynasty in the Egyptian Archaic period, and therefore creates havoc for the established narrative that ancient Egyptians built the pyramids. A main reason is that structures built in the first 2 dynasties in ancient Egypt are largely made of wood and mud bricks, with some small use of stone for steles, walls, and floors. People from this era did not present abilities to build large stone structures. On top of that, according to the World History website, the Second Dynasty was an obscure and turbulent time, marked by uprisings and civil unrest throughout. The precise cause of this is unclear, as sources for this period are confused and even the dates of rulers are unreliable. Due to whatever national upheaval was going on, the history of the Second Dynasty is difficult to read with little archaeological evidence. War between Upper and Lower Egypt seemed to have occupied many of the rulers, and the nation may even have divided during this time. This means the kings in the Second Dynasty period would not have had the required resources, like human labor, to build the 2 gigantic pyramids of Giza, while at the same time engaging in warfare. These ancient kings had urgent internal affairs to confront when in war, and their resources would have been directed not to constructing pyramids, but to sustaining armies. They would be focused on maintaining their kingdoms and their positions, as opposed to using limited resources to erect the biggest stone structures in the world. Projects that enormous can only be achieved during a time of stability and abundance. As a result, the earlier carbon dating results of the Great Pyramids would cast doubt on how ancient Egyptians were able to build these humongous pyramids, while they couldn't even make a much smaller stone building when the kingdom was in turmoil. There is a convenient reason that Egyptologists stick with the current timetable, which states the earliest pyramids started in the 3rd dynasty, and the biggest and the best Giza pyramids were constructed in the 4th dynasty, as the earlier dating would fracture the whole currently accepted pyramid timeline. In 2009, a team of researchers did a reanalysis of the 1995 raw data, excluded some samples, 6 from Khufu Pyramid and 5 from Menkaure Pyramid, and this time, the new series of calibrations show much closer agreement with conventional chronological records. Unfortunately, this report only presented the compiled data but not the individual dating results. I'm no expert in carbon-14 dating, as I don't know whether the proverb, if you torture the data long enough, you'll confess to anything, applies here or not. Anyway, I'll come back to the possible older dating of the Great Pyramids later. Now, about the other striking finding of the 1995 study. The carbon dating results vary greatly even for a single monument. Khufu's Great Pyramid is supposedly built within 20 to 30 years, around 2600 BC. But the radiocarbon results are scattered all over the place, with the oldest and the youngest dates being 1,550 years apart. I highlighted the dates, which are over 100 years older than 2600 BC in blue, and the dates over 100 years younger in yellow. We can see the older and younger dates are mixed together. The scattering and mixing of dating results can be seen in other 2 Giza pyramids too. For the Khafre Pyramid, the dates scattered over a range of 700 plus years, and the Menkaure Pyramid's data scattered over 1,000 years. More importantly, Sometimes, the exact same sample or samples taken from the same location are dated to be separated by several hundred years. Such strange cases happen in all three Great Pyramids. In this chart of the Khufu Pyramid, I highlighted the charcoal samples collected from the same location and or the same context. About a third of the 46 Khufu Pyramid samples belong to the same location yet hundreds of years apart category, and they show up throughout the pyramid. Some are at a low second course. Some are close to the top of the pyramid at a 198th course. Why do the mortar samples from the same spots have dispersed dating results? How did that happen, and can this be logically reconciled? The 1995 carbon dating results raised two difficult questions. They not only may upend the assigned pyramid dating by being on average over 100 years older, but also suggest that the pyramid's construction could have lasted for centuries to over a millennium, thus not built within any king's lifetime. The older and scattering carbon dating results are sometimes referred as the old wood problem. To resolve this problem, archaeologists have proposed that the pyramid builders might have often reused really old wood. Radiocarbon dating can only tell when a tree died, not when it was last used. Wood might lie around for centuries before being burnt in a dry climate like Egypt. If the wood of different ages were burnt at once to make mortar, that would have resulted in some older dating ages, and why the charcoal fragments are dated to be hundreds of years apart. However, these researchers admit that it was unlikely that the pyramid builders consistently used multi-centuries-old wood as fuel in preparing their gypsum mortar. I'm going to point out a critical clue in the carbon dating results, which the burning old wood hypothesis cannot answer. I will call this the young wood problem. Most people focus on interpreting why there are older charcoal embedded in the mortar, while they overlook the fact there are also charcoal dated to be centuries younger than the respective kings. The three Great Pyramids all have this younger wood problem. This means during the time when the Giza pyramids were presumably built, these wood materials did not exist. They came hundreds of years after. You cannot burn wood that does not exist yet. To make things even more complicated, some of the younger dating came from the mortar samples also contain older dating results. Like in the Khufu Pyramid, in two occasions, the samples collected from the same context have both old and young dates. Among the three samples taken from the same location of the 76th course, two are dated to be decades after the death of Khufu, and one 163 years before Khufu's reign. The samples gathered on the 145th course at the same location have scattered dating results too. One dates 70 years after Khufu's death, and one dates to the earlier Second Dynasty. In the Khafre Pyramid, 5 carbon samples were picked from the same seam of the 6th course, and they scattered over a range of over 400 years, with 2 being about 100 years after Khafre's passing, and 1 over 200 years before Khafre's time. The Menkaure Pyramid has 2 similar cases with even more dramatic age differences. At one location, a charcoal piece dates to over 200 years after the king's death, and the other over 200 years before the king's reign. 3 samples taken from the same mortar seam on the 18th course date to over 100 to 300 plus years after the king's time, while another sample there turned out to be over 200 years before the king's era. If these pyramids were built by Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure respectively during their times of ruling, then why the mortar samples from the same location provide all different dating results, especially as some are much younger and did not exist when these kings were in power? Did each Great Pyramid take hundreds of years to build? Or are these younger dating results a sign of later restoration work? If the much younger charcoal fragments in the gypsum mortar indeed originated from later generations of repair work, then what about the older charcoal samples? Are we sure that they did not also derive from the earlier restoration attempts? What if they all resulted from ancient Egyptians' repair work which involved adding gypsum mortar to maintain the pre-existing pyramids. I think the gypsum mortar found in the gaps and cracks in the pyramid's cores, in which the charcoal and other organic materials were extracted for carbon dating, is more likely to be the result of patchwork done by dynastic Egyptians a long time after the original pyramid construction. Why? Because of two reasons. First, gypsum mortar is not a good structural mortar, as it has very poor strength and lack of water resistance. Compared to the cement mortar, gypsum mortar has significantly low compressive strength, making it unsuitable for load-bearing walls or areas requiring high structural integrity. Look at the immense weighty Great Pyramids of Giza. Load-bearing is key in the pyramid construction. Would you use weak mortar in the core of these magnificent projects, which would take unthinkable resources and labor to build? No sound builder would. And two, let me remind you that scientists have uncovered that several big pyramids casings and core stones are artificial, reconstituted limestone by using various methods, which I have discussed in prior videos. This indicates the pyramid builders were a sophisticated culture that had the knowledge and means to mass-produce long-lasting, top-quality concrete or geopolymer blocks for their everlasting structures. They should have had the knowledge of creating high-strength cement mortar and knew that gypsum mortar has very poor strength, as they would not have used gypsum mortar for their pyramid projects. If you are going to devote a tremendous effort to construct the pyramids, you will not risk failing the entire project with some weak mortar when you already know a much better one exists. Therefore, the weak gypsum mortar applied to the pyramid core stones is unlikely the work of the original pyramid builders. If the gypsum mortar was not original, then how and why does it show up all over the pyramids? Let's imagine 5,000 or 6,000 years ago, a group of ancient Egyptians arrived at the Giza area. As their first time viewing the majestic pyramids on top of the Giza plateau. What would they be thinking at that moment? Amazed and astounded, right? They would probably deem these awe-inspiring monuments as sacred, if not the work of a god. They would bow and pray to the pyramids as marvels left for them by the gods. They would touch the stones and think they are holy. And if they see some parts are crumbling, they might have thought it's their duty and a way to show respect to maintain and repair such a gift. Ancient Egyptians started to use gypsum mortar around 4000 BC. The oldest carbon dating result of the Great Pyramid of Khufu is 3705 BC from a charcoal sample on the 198th course, close to the very top, which is over 500 years before the dynastic Egypt. Among the 46 carbon samples of the Great Pyramid, 30 of them, which is 65%, date to be older than the Old Kingdom, that started around 2700 BC. Between 3700 to 2700 BC is when the Egyptians were known to make gypsum mortar, yet not able to use stone as a main construction material. It's conceivable that ancient Egyptians had tried to use what they had on hand to do simple restoration work, to patch up certain areas of the pyramids using gypsum mortar, in order to maintain a god's creation. Such maintenance might have lasted for centuries to a millennium. I think it's more plausible for ancient people to spend the money, time, and effort to maintain sites that are regarded as sacred and can bless and protect them, rather than to upkeep some distant king's tombs who died hundreds of years ago. So, here is what I propose. Whoever can create millions of advanced reconstituted limestone concrete blocks and stack them up to several precise and impressive pyramids would have used stronger cement mortar instead of weaker gypsum mortar for their construction. Therefore, the gypsum mortar with embedded organic speckles are not the work of the original pyramid builders, but of subsequent ancient Egyptians who tried to repair and preserve the pyramids. The scattering radiocarbon dating results of the pyramids reflect the repeated restoration work of dynastic Egyptians and are not indicators of the true ages of the pyramids. Ancient Egyptians did not build the Great Pyramids, but they had made attempts using gypsum mortar to fix the exposed, crumbling parts of the pyramid course. Since gypsum mortar is weak, using such mortar for restoration would not have been very effective. Previous patchwork likely repeatedly disintegrated, which led to certain areas getting fixed over and over. This could be the reason why the mortar from the same locations contains charcoal fragments dates to different ages, separated by hundreds of years. My hypothesis can explain why the majority of the Great Pyramid's dating results are 200 to 300 years older than expected, why the dating scatters greatly in a single monument, why some dates are centuries younger than the supposed construction time, and why the mortar extracted from the same location can yield very different dating results. And if I'm right, which I believe I am, that means the Great Giza pyramids predate the dynastic Egyptians and were built by an unknown advanced civilization. What do you think? If you have any insights, please leave me a comment. If you like my video, please subscribe to my channel and share with others. You can also support me on Patreon, which is a monthly charge, or on Buy Me a Coffee. I appreciate your support. This is Curious Being. I'm Tina. Thanks for watching and see you next time.